Thank you very much, Ramu, and also the Boston Global Forum. I'm going to try this Google. I need to share my screen. Are you able to see that?
Yes, it's coming up, I think. Yes, thanks.
Great. Are you able to see that as it changes? No. Let's see.
Yes, we are now. Thanks.
Okay, great. Okay. So my presentation is going to be a little different, which is probably par for the course. But Ramu has asked me to talk a little bit about hope and despair in the age of global enlightenment. And so what I'm going to do is a short little overview of me and background and possible policy implications and conclusions. So my drive and determination is to create spaces of hope where everyone is seen, heard, and valued. These are spaces that are not giving voice to the voiceless, but rather co-creating spaces where those voices can speak for themselves and be heard. Coming out of my doctorate, it became very clear to me that we needed more books that were co-authored by Global South and BIPOC communities. Too often books are written about us, and I wanted to co-create spaces that we can talk with and talk to these communities to not only share our stories of frustration, but also solutions and actions. My aim is to cultivate and nurture our knowledge and or critically address barriers that obstruct it. The result is that the space benefits everybody. The purpose of this talk is to focus on hope, despair, and peace building in the context of refugee, asylum seekers, and internally displaced communities. These communities have a right and a need to be a part of the conversation of peace building so they can offer their own culturally appropriate, contextualized, and hopeful solutions to the forefront. In my research, I want to dispel some myths with regard to refugees, internally displaced people, and asylum seekers. The reality is that there is limited migration happening to in the global north compared to the global south. Developing nations host about 80% of the world refugees. And this is not a migration crisis. It is a failure to protect, support, and contextualize issues. Critical hope theoretical frameworks derive my actual conceptual framework. It derives from three disciplines: philosophy, psychology, and education. It draws from the affective and cognitive psychological aspects while creating spaces that support social action and social awakening. Critical hope is the pedagogical tool or practice of teaching that uses a critical theory lens to address unjust systems through meaningful dialogue and empathic responses. When we use critical hope as a pedagogical tool, pertinent questions are asked about whose voices are heard in describing the refugee and immigrant experience and whose voices are absent. Speaking for ourselves action research is the research approach that I use. It's where the community identifies the problem, the research is designed around that problem, and the community uses the research to decide and inform them on what steps to take to resolve the problem. The goal of SOAR is to research with and not on participants by involving them as co-researchers, positioning them as authorities of their own experiences, and further developing their own awareness of systemic issues to move them to social action. I'll talk a little bit about my research. And we can learn a lot from my co-participants and co-researchers. For example, a participant said, "We tried to look in the prison. We communicated to look for them in the prison, but they didn't find them in the prison. Until now, 1 year or something, we don't know if they were dead or died in the prison. We don't know anything. So at the time, I really felt hopeless. Until I decided to come here. when I came to Kakuma. This quote describes is a loss of friend, and there's immense trauma knowing that death is certain and unable to do anything about it. When we think about our policy implications, we need to recognize that their pain is also our pain. Our policies need to respond with empathy and not sympathy. The next quote talks about despair and false hope. The quote says, "But if the opportunity for education, higher education, is given to you, someone who is educated will not hold a gun and go and fight." Why would they go and fight? Because I can speak with them and find out why do they go on fighting. So definitely we are not allowed to send ourselves to school. We're allowed to use a tool to kill ourselves. And I think that higher education, if I will have the opportunity in the future, I will use this as a tool to bring peace for young people, mostly for youth. So critical despair is looking at things critically. However, the reality is that you have no control. And this demonstrated by having a gun and killing your own people and not being allowed to be educated. False hope and the recognition of it is demonstrated through the idea that fighting will solve everything, and then the recognition that fighting will solve nothing, and it is a tool to kill themselves. Rather, hope is where the participant believes in alternative ways of bringing peace through education. The question that I have is, in these refugee camps, is are we creating spaces of hope for refugees to thrive or just to maintain and survive? And we talk about strengthening refugees' resilience for what, to cope, or so they can live in the camp all their lives. Higher education offers space for transformation and ability to subvert the status quo. As one of the participants said, they are creating a space that they can have different kinds of conversations. These are the kinds of conversations that have the ability to dictate what happens with their education in their lives. And they want an opportunity to reflect critically together on what is happening in their communities, what are the possibilities, and how they can use their skill sets to be a part of the solution. Many refugees who live in camps more than 17 years or practically their entire lives, protracted context and long-term encampments are here to stay. If we're going to create more camps, which we have around 59 refugee camps that are recognized, many are informal settlements where I started my work in Diepsloot informal settlement in South Africa. We need to hold on to our humanity and co-create spaces for individuals to thrive. Using a development approach and technology, create spaces for employment, much needed infrastructure, and most of all, hope for the future. We need to connect higher education to employment. And last, being a refugee could be anyone. The folks that every minute, 24 people are displaced. We don't choose. Reading off statistics is far different than meeting the people who are the statistics, for they each have stories of resilience, struggle, survival, and believe it or not, hope. There is hope and knowledge in Kakuma refugee camp, and if you're quiet, you can hear her breathing. Thank you.